Hello everyone, my name is Rafid and along with my group members Gift and Alvi, today we are going to present you the report Individualism, Collectivism and Opportunism, a cultural perspective on transaction cost economics and how this report can help Apple. Transaction cost economics itself is a key paradigm in social science and economics research. It was first proposed by Coase in 1937 and later it was popularized by Williamson in 1975 and later on again by him in 1985. This transaction cost economics looks at our opportunism as a vital part of human nature and it considers every single human being is born with it. Opportunism. Opportunism is described by Williamson as self-interest seeking with guile, also by the use of lying, stealing, and cheating. Subtle forms of deceit, incomplete or distorted disclosure of information can also be a part of opportunism. Prior conditioning is usually required for a person to be opportunistic in certain situations. There are many criticisms of opportunism in transaction cost economics, the main one being it overgeneralizes opportunism as being a part of human nature. It also thinks that a person will act opportunistically in all situations, but we do know there are other factors such as culture, his moral upbringings, and his values, which will definitely affect how he or she would act in a situation. TCE has also been criticized by many authors as being dangerous and unhealthy. Culture and prior conditioning. As we all come from different cultures, our values would derive from that culture itself. For example, somebody who grew up in India would not have the same values or morals as the person who grew up in Canada. There are two general rationales of culture. The first one being continuous inculturation. It means the transmission of cultural values from the old generation to the new generation by informal or formal means. For example, if a child goes to a school, through the school, some of the values of the culture would be transferred to him. The second one would be culture's prior conditioning, which results in stable values. For example, somebody growing up in the Middle East might have stable family values compared to other nations. Individualism, collectivism, and opportunistic propensity. Individualists would identify themselves as self-autonomous, where collectivists would like to identify more with their groups. Furthermore, we know when individual and collective interests are in conflict, individual interests have the primacy in individualist cultures, whereas collective interests have the primacy in collectivist cultures. From this, we also get to know a person's self-identity usually consists of his own self-identity and his social identity. Individualism versus collectivism. People who were born in the individualism or individualistic societies tend to care more about their self-image and they look for opportunities that would benefit themselves and themselves only. Whereas collectivist societies and the people who are from those societies tend to always take opportunities those would benefit their whole group. Social identification inside their group matters greatly to a person who was born and raised in a collectivist society, whereas individualists only care about their self-image and whatever the group thinks does not matter as much to them. Some examples of individualist societies would be the United States of America or Canada, and collectivist societies would be China. Individualism and collectivism, moral obligations to others. Individualists often deal with everybody equally and ethically in the same standards, whereas collectivists are more likely to treat their in-groups better than out-groups. Collectivists, although can sometimes, on situations, treat the out-groups in a favorable way to take opportunities that would benefit their in-groups, whereas individualists tend to use self-interest and justification to take the opportunities.
Hi, my name is Gift Anugwa, and I will be talking on the proposition of transaction between self and in groups, transaction between self and out group, and transaction between groups. Transaction between self and in-group talks about a transaction between a person and their group, which can be family, friends, and social groups. Because social identities are important and collective interest is primary, collectivists view themselves and their group as interdependent, seeking mutual interest and bound by strong mutual obligations. A collectivist will prioritize their in-group relationship and will have more harmonious group interactions than an individualist. In a case of conflict of self-interest between self and in-group, the individualist will have a greater opportunistic propensity compared to the collectivist. Due to the primacy of self-interest and weaker moral obligations to others, they are capable of exploiting all strategies and opportunities in order to gain competitive advantage. Transaction between self and ad groups. This talks about the transaction between a person and a group to which the individual do not identify with or belong to. That is to say, in a simple thing, a transaction between a person and a stranger. In this transaction, there is no bond between self and families or peers, and so the collectivist is free from any moral obligations or social pressure to act in the interest of the other party. The individualist, on the other hand, is restrained in violating the rights of the other groups due to the universal norm and ethics applicable to all individuals, and as a result of this, the collectivists have a greater opportunistic propensity than an individualist. The proposition here is that when there is a conflict of interest between self and an ad group, the collectivist will have a greater opportunistic propensity than will the individualist. And when there is a conflict of interest between self and outgroup, individual between self and outgroup individual, the collectivist will have a greater opportunistic propensity than will the individualist. Transaction between groups. In this case, collectivists and individualists are put into the same situation. Studies have shown that in intergroup transactions, collectivists are more likely to be faithful agents of their in-groups than the individualists. Because they are more willing to fight on behalf of their in-group, they tend to exploit all strategies and opportunities to gain competitive advantage. So the proposition here is that collectivists will have a greater opportunistic behavior on behalf of their in-group than individualists. When there is a conflict of interest between an in-group and an out-group, the collectivist will have a greater opportunistic propensity on behalf of the in-group than will the individualist. Contribution. This article does not simply assume that opportunism is inherent in human nature, but rather seeks to explain how opportunistic behavior systematically differs according to the sociocultural circumstances based on recent advances in social and cross-cultural psychology. In a nutshell, the cultural perspective proposed in this article specifies that when transacting with in-groups and others in in-groups, individualists tend to be more opportunistic than collectivists, but when dealing with out-groups and others in the out-group, collectivists tend to be more opportunistic. Overall, as acknowledged by Williamson in 1985, CCE is not applicable and crude in the following three ways. Convert the crude assumption of opportunism into one that takes cultural differences into consideration. Specify the trade-offs involved when dealing with potential and real problems of opportunism in different cultures. Limit the degree of freedom and limit the degree of freedom when making sweeping statements in opportunism. Research implications. The research implies that cultural generalization implies individualists tend to be more opportunistic in most situations, and both collectivists and individualists can be opportunistic depending on different situations and many factors. The practical implications looks at the cultural perspectives, the lack of mutual understanding, and the appropriate mechanism to deal with interorganizational opportunism. Apple is one of the world's most influential business organizations in terms of technological innovation and creativity. It was founded on the 1st of April 1976 and is one of the leading technological companies in the world with operations in many countries including USA, Canada, and China. They manufacture, design and market smartphones, tablets, personal computers, and wearable devices like the Apple Watch. They also offer software and applications. They have a revenue above $365 billion as of 2021. We can see in the charts that the revenue for Apple has grown over the years in Asia markets as compared to 2013. This research can help Apple Inc. in its emerging markets in Asia. The possibilities of opening more operations in Asia for organizational efficiency, high risks of protest due to cultural barriers. Most countries in this region have a collectivist culture and also better understanding handling of situations to avoid further protests. How Apple operates in USA or Canada and China. Apple has a headquarters in USA where all the main decisions are made. They have been able to build a very high brand loyalty with their strand strategies over the years. In China, they employed more than 300,000 workers at a time in their factory. They have relatively lower brand loyalty, but they are starting to get into the market in recent times.
Now I'm going to talk about a research paper named Apple and Consumer Collectivism, a look at the nature of brand cults. This study explores the factor that might drive individuals to go beyond operating system, brand loyalty, to become a member of brand cults that look upon a particular brand of the operating system as indispensable to their lives. It examines the factors that drive many people to become so enamored with the Apple operating system that social scientists compare the phenomenon to religious fanaticism. One related theory proposed by Thompson et al. Is known as Individual Collectivist Values, ICV. ICV describes the shared beliefs, attitudes, and norms that are expressed by the individual toward the relationship between the individual and the cult. ICV guides the behavior of an individual and captures the relative importance an individual accord to group versus the self. Thompson et al. Found that the differences in individual level ICV have a significant impact on traditional models of brand loyalty. The findings of the study demonstrate that consumers with high collectivist values will be more loyal to a local brand, even when brand trust and perceived quality are at low levels. This research is thus pertinent to the goal of linking a set of individual characteristics that might predict loyalty to Apple operating systems. A framework was developed to illustrate the relationship between the variable brand loyalty toward Apple and several predictor variables, all highly correlated to ICV. Our model identifies 7 variables including opportunism, conservatism, trustworthiness, piracy, gender, innovativeness, and technical savviness. Now we have to look at table 1. Table 1. A total of 1,035 internet users were surveyed via an online survey. The survey was distributed via social networking platforms such as Twitter and Facebook. A link to the online survey was initially posted to social media by undergraduate students. The posting encouraged others to share the link on their sites, and the survey was passed along accordingly. The demographic characteristics of the sample are shown in Table 1. The sample is nearly equally weighted between the males and females, but skewed toward younger, less affluent respondents than might be the case if the sample was a better representative of the population of US-based internet users. Now we can take out table 2. A presentation of relevant descriptive statistics is represented above in table 2. As indicated, the means for each of the variables are all relatively close to the midpoint 3.0 of the maximum and minimum. While there was multicollinearity between some of the variables, and some of the variables showed evidence of skewed distribution, the statistical technique used to analyze these data are robust and usually biased against finding significance when assumptions are violated. For the variable gender, females comprise a slightly larger percentage of the total sample group, and nearly 70% of individuals choose PC over Apple. And now table 4 and 5. According to the data presented in the coefficient table 4, our model and hypothesis were shown to be valid. The first variable examined yielded a t-value of negative 7.891, suggesting that more opportunistic individuals will be less loyal to Apple products. The second variable also supported the hypothesis, giving a t-value of positive 4.263 and suggesting trusting individuals will be loyal to Apple. The third variable, gender, yielded a score of 0.525, which was in support of the corresponding hypothesis, but the relationship was not strong enough to be considered significant. The fourth variable entered into the model was innovativeness. The t-score was negative 0.240, consistent with H4 but not strong enough to be considered significant. The fifth variable was conservatism, which yielded a t-value negative 6.713, suggesting that more conservative individuals will be less loyal to Apple brand. The sixth variable, tech savviness, yielded a t-value of negative 2.974, supporting the proposition that more technically inclined individuals will be less loyal to the Apple brand. Finally, propensity toward digital piracy produced a t-value of minus or negative 1.755, which was strongly in favor of the corresponding hypothesis, but not quite strong enough to be declared significant.
And finally, I would like to conclude by stating how this paper can be of benefit to a transnational or multinational company. Companies can use this research to adapt to needs of people coming from different cultures and also opt their strategies and campaigns to effectively meet these needs. The different departments of a company can benefit from people from either individualist or collectivist culture. When an organization is aware of how different people behave among in-groups, out-groups, and among each other, it gives the company an advantage with their human resources. Findings from this research can help a company that operates internationally understand the different cultures of the country it operates in and determine the appropriate strategy that will enable it to achieve its goals in the region it serves. We sincerely appreciate your attention today and we'll be interested to hear from you with your thoughts. However, if you have any questions or if you're interested to know more about this topic, you can always look it up on Google at your free time. You can also ask us too. Thank you.